You sit down on the edge of your bed, planning to take 5 minutes to unwind. You open an app, swipe, and suddenly it's 1 a.m. This chart shows how our daily digital media consumption has grown over time. While historical averages stayed relatively low, current mobile screen time now frequently pushes past a 4-hour threshold for the average user. Because your body is motionless, your brain tries to tell you this is rest. You're lying down. You're quiet. It feels like taking a break. But under the skull, your brain is sprinting. It is processing a relentless barrage of images, text, and audio cues, burning through cognitive resources at a rate that mimics intense physical exertion. To understand why you feel exhausted instead of refreshed, we are going to map the exact chemical and physical cost of a single 4-hour scrolling session, minute by minute, to see what actually remains in your head when the screen finally goes black. Minute 1. You enter a highly curated stream of novelty. Every swipe delivers a punchline, a piece of gossip, or an aesthetic image, rewarding your attention instantly. This diagram maps a mechanism called reward prediction error. Your brain guesses how interesting the next post will be. When a video turns out to be much funnier or more shocking than expected, your brain registers the error and releases a sharp spike of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that drives motivation. The algorithm quickly figures out what causes those errors, and the spikes become erratic and continuous. You enter a state of deep, unbreakable focus. That first hour feels pleasurable because you are highly stimulated, but the pacing of your thoughts is entirely surrendered to the code driving the feed. As we cross into hour 2, the initial high starts to fade. The novelty wears off, but the mechanics of the infinite scroll keep your thumb moving out of sheer momentum. The feed forces you into a state of continuous micro-task switching. You watch a comedy sketch, followed by a natural disaster, and an advertisement for shoes. Watch the frontal lobe on this diagram. That is your prefrontal cortex, the executive center responsible for holding your attention. Every time the context shifts, it forces this region to quickly reorient, burning glucose and causing intense mechanical fatigue. When you start spacing out during hour 2, your brain's actual capacity to direct its own attention is simply failing under the load. Hours 3 and 4. The exhaustion is absolute. You are now staring blankly, operating entirely on habit, yet unable to put the device down. To manage this high-stimulus environment, your brain initiates a process called synaptic pruning. It looks for neural pathways that are no longer being used, like the ones required for sustained, quiet reading, and begins to weaken them. On this diagram, those long, deep focus connections are fading. At the exact same time, the brain strengthens a cluster of rapid, short-burst connections built specifically to process a frantic feed. Your mind's internal rhythm is being conditioned. It is learning to expect information to arrive at the breakneck speed of the digital input. By the end of the session, the brain has prioritized the frantic speed of the feed over the depth of the thought, sacrificing its resources to handle a pace that doesn't exist in the physical world. Then the 4-hour mark hits. You finally lock the screen. The room goes dark. This triggers the digital echo. Your brain is trapped in a paradox, deeply cognitively fatigued, but chemically hyper-aroused from the continuous dopamine loop. This graph plots that crash. When the stimulation vanishes, your dopamine drops well below the line of baseline reality. Without that chemical drive, the physical offline world suddenly feels painfully slow, understimulating, and frustrating to engage with. This leaves you with a shattered attention span. Trying to read a book, hold a quiet conversation, or just sit in silence feels neurologically impossible in this state. Repeating this 4-hour cycle daily eventually makes these temporary shifts permanent. You are training the brain to expect constant fragmentation, which erodes your baseline ability to tolerate silence. The most effective countermeasure is a concept called digital friction. This means intentionally making your device annoying or difficult to access seamlessly. You can create this friction by setting hard app limits, charging your phone in another room, or changing your display to a flat, unappealing grayscale. These minor hurdles act as speed bumps. They force you to pause and think before you open an app, disrupting the scrolling timeline before the most severe neuroplastic shifts can occur. By intentionally breaking the cycle, you give your brain the quiet space it needs to reset its chemistry, silence the digital echoes, and reclaim its natural capacity